Good wishes to all of you. History of Medieval India, Chapter 12 Struggle for Empire in North India to Mughals and Afghans, 1525 to 1555, audiobook. Central Asia and Babur. Important changes took place in Central and West Asia during the 15th century. After the disintegration of the Mongol Empire in the 14th century, Timur united Iran and Turan under one rule once again. Timur's empire extended from the lower Volga to the river Indus and included Asia Minor, northern Turkey, Iran, Transoxiana, Afghanistan, and a part of the Punjab. Timur died in 1405, but his grandson, Shahrukh Mirza, the 1448 was able to keep intact a large part of his empire. He gave patronage to arts and letters, and in his time, Samarkand and Herat became the cultural centers of West Asia. The ruler of Samarkand had great prestige in the entire Islamic world. The power of the Timurids declined rapidly during the second half of the 15th century, largely owing to the Timurid tradition of patroning the empire. The various Timurid principalities which arose always fought and wrangled among themselves. This provided an opportunity to two new elements to come to the forefront. From the north, a Turk-Mongol tribe, the Uzbeks, thrust into Transoxania. The Uzbeks and became Muslims but were looked down upon by the Timurids, who considered them uncultured barbarians. Further to the west, a new dynasty, the Safavid dynasty, began to dominate Iran. The Safavids were descended from an order of saints who traced their ancestry to the Prophet. They supported the side sect among the Muslims and persecuted those who were not prepared to accept the Shiite tenets. The Uzbeks, on the other hand, were Sunnis. Thus, political conflict between these two elements was embittered by sectarian strife. Further to the west of Iran, the power of the Ottoman Turks was growing. They wanted to dominate Eastern Europe as well as Iraq and Iran. Thus, the scene was set for the conflict of three mighty empires in Asia during the 6th century. In 1494, at the young of 12, Babur succeeded to Farghana, a small state in Transoxana, obviously oblivious of the Uzbek danger. The Timurid princes were busy fighting one another. Babur too made a bid to conquer Samarkand from his uncle. He won the city twice but lost it in no time on both occasions. The second time, the Uzbek chief Saibani Khan was called it in to help out oust Babur. Shaibani defeated Babur and conquered Samarkand. Soon he overran the rest of the Timur kingdoms in the area. This forced Babur to move towards Kabul, which he conquered in 1504. For the next 14 years, Babur kept biding his time for the reconquest of his homeland from the Uzbeks. He tried to enlist the help of his uncles, the ruler of Herat, in the enterprises, but to no avail. Ultimately, Herat too was overrun by Shaibani Khan. This led to a direct conflict between the Uzbeks and the Safavids, since the latter also laid claim to Herat and the surrounding area, which is called Khorasan by contemporary writers in a famous battle in 1510 near Mer Shah Ismail. The Shah of Iran defeated and killed Shaibani Khan. Babur now made another attempt to recover Samarkand, this time with the help of the Iranian forces. He was duly installed in Samarkand but chafed under the control of the Iranian generals who wanted to treat Babur as the governor of an Iranian province rather than as an independent prince. Meanwhile, the Uzbeks recovered rapidly from their defeat. Once again, Babur was ousted from Samarkand and had to return to Kabul. Finally, Shah Ismail himself was defeated by the Ottoman Sultan in 1514, thus leaving the Uzbeks masters of Transoxiana. These developments finally forced Babur to look towards India. Conquest of India. Babur says that from the time he obtained Kabul 1504 to his victory at Panipat, I had never ceased to think of the conquest of Hindustan, but he had never found a suitable opportunity for undertaking it, hindered as I was sometimes by the apprehension of my begs, sometimes by the disagreement between my brothers and myself. Like countless earlier invaders from Central Asia, Babur was drawn to India by the lure of its fabulous wealth. India was the land of gold and riches. Babur's ancestor Timur had not only carried away the vast treasure and many skillful artisans who helped him to consolidate his Asian empire and beautify his capital, but also annexed some areas in the Punjab. These areas remained in the possession of Timur's successors for several generations. When Babur conquered Afghanistan, he felt that he had a legitimate right to these areas. Another reason why Babur covered the Punjab Parganas was the mere income of Kabul. The historian Abul Fazl remarks he Babur ruled over Badakhshan, Kandar, and Kabul, which did not yield sufficient income for the requirements of the army. In fact, in some of the border territories, the expense on controlling the armies and administration was greater than the income. With these mega resources, Babur could not provide well for his begs and kinsmen. He was also apprehensive of an Uzbek attack on Kabul and considered India a good place of refuge and a suitable base for operations against the Uzbeks. The political situation in northwest India was suitable for Babur's entry into India. Sikandar Lodi had died in 1517 and Ibrahim Lodi had succeeded him. Ibrahim's efforts to create a strong centralized empire had alarmed the Afghans chief as well as the Rajputs. One of the most powerful Afghan chiefs was Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of the Punjab, who was almost an independent ruler. Daulat Khan attempted to conciliate Ibrahim Lodi by sending his son to his court to pay homage. At the same time, he wanted to strengthen his position by annexing the frontier tracts of Bihar, etc. In 1518 to 1519, Babur conquered the powerful fort of Bihar. He then sent letters and verbal messages to Daulat Khan and Ibrahim Lodi, asking for the cession of the area which had belonged to the Turks. But Daulat Khan detained Babur's envoy at Lahore, neither granting him audience nor allowing him to go to Ibrahim Lodi. When Babur returned to Kabul, Daulat Khan occupied Bhira and expelled Babur's agents posted there. In 1522-21, Babur once again crossed the Indus and easily captured Bira and Sialkot, the twin gateways to Hindustan. Lahore also capitulated to him. He might have proceeded further, but for the news of a revolt at Kandar, he retraced his steps and after a siege of a year and a half, captured Kandar. Thus, reassured, Bahur was once again able to turn his attention towards India. It was about this time that Babur received the embassy from Daulat Khan Lodi, led by his son Dilawar Khan. They invited Babur to India and suggested that he should displace Ibrahim Lodi since he was a tyrant and enjoyed no support from his nobles. It is probable that a messenger from Rana Sangha had arrived at the same time, inviting Babur to invade India. These embassies convinced Babur that the time was ripe for his conquest of the whole of the Punjab, if not of India itself. In 1525, while Babur was at Peshawar, he received the news that Daulat Khan Lodi had changed sides again. He had collected an army of 30,000 to 40,000 men, ousted Babur's men from Sialkot and was marching to Lahore. At Babur's approach, the army of Daulat Khan melted away. Daulat Khan submitted and was pardoned. Thus, within 3 weeks of crossing the Indus, Babur became the master of the Punjab. The Battle of Panipat, 20 April 1526. A conflict with Ibrahim Lodi, the ruler of Delhi, was inevitable and Babur prepared for it by marching towards Delhi. Ibrahim Lodi met Babur at Panipat with a force estimated at 1 lakh men and 1,000 elephants. Since the Indian armies generally contained large hordes of servants, the fighting men on Ibrahim Lodi's side must have been far less than this figure. Babur had crossed the Indus with a force of 12,000, but his had been swelled by his army in India and the large number of Hindustani nobles and soldiers who joined Babur in the Punjab. Even then, Babur's army was numerically inferior. Babur strengthened his position by resting one wing of his army on the city of Panipat, which had a large number of houses, and protected the others by means of a ditch filled with branches of trees. In front, he layered together a large number of carts to act as a defending wall. Between two carts, breastworks were erected on which soldiers could rest their guns and fire. Babur calls his device an Ottoman Rumi device, for it had been used by the Ottomans in their famous battle against Shah Ismail of Iran. Babur had also secured the services of two Ottoman master gunners, Ustad Ali and Mustafa. The use of gunpowder had been gradually developing in India. Babur says that he used it for the first time in his attacks on the fortress of Bhira. Apparently, gunpowder was known in India, but its use for artillery became common in North India with the advent of Babur. Ibrahim Lodi had no idea of the strongly defended position of Babur. He had apparently expected Babur to fight a mobile mode of warfare, which was usual with the Central Asians making rapid advances or retreats as the need arose. After skirmishing for 7 or 8 days, Ibrahim Lodi's force came out for the fateful battle. Seeing the strength of Babur's position, they hesitated. While Ibrahim was still reorganizing his forces, the two extreme wings of Babur's army wheeled round and attacked Ibrahim's forces from the side and rear. Babur's gunners used their guns with good effect from the front, but Babur gives a large part of the credit for his victory to his bowmen. Curiously, he makes little reference to Ibrahim's elephants. Apparently, Ibrahim had little time to use them. Despite these early setbacks, Ibrahim's Lodi's army fought valiantly. The battle raged for 2 or 3 hours. Ibrahim Lodi fought to the last with a group of 5,000 to 6,000 people around him. It is estimated that besides him, more than 15,000 of his men were killed in the battle. The Battle of Panipat is regarded as one of the decisive battles in Indian history. It broke the back of Lodi power and brought under Babur's control the entire area up to Delhi and Agra. The treasure stored by Ibrahim Lodi at Agra relieved Babur from his financial difficulties. The rich territory up to Jaunpur also lay open to Babur. However, Babur had to wage two hard fought battles, one against Rana Sanga of Mewar and the other against the eastern Afghans, before he could consolidate his hold on this area. Viewed from this angle, the Battle of Panipat was not as decisive in the political fields as has been made out. Its real importance lies in the fact that it opened a new phase in the struggle for domination in North India. The difficulties of Babur after his victory at Panipat were manifold. Many of his bikes were not prepared for a long campaign in India. With the onset of the hot weather, their misgivings had increased. They were far away from home in a strange and hostile land. Babur tells us that the people of India displayed remarkable hostility, abandoning their villages at the approach of the Mughal armies. Obviously, the memories of Timur's sacking and plundering of the towns and villages were still fresh in their minds. Babur knew that the resources in India alone would enable him to found a strong empire and satisfy his begs. Not for us the poverty of Kabul again, he recorded in his diary. He thus took a firm stand, proclaiming his intention to stay on in India and granting leave to a number of his begs who wanted to go back to Kabul. This immediately cleared the air, but it also invited the hostility of Rana Sanga, who began his preparations for showdown with Babur. The Battle of Kanwa. The growing conflict between Rana Sanga and Ibrahim Lodi for the domination of eastern Rajasthan and Malwa has already been mentioned. After defeating Muhammad Khilji of Malwa, the influence of the Rana had gradually extended up to Piliakhar, a small river in the neighborhood of Agra. The establishment of an empire in the Indo-Gangetic Valley by Babur was a threat to the Rana Sanga. Sanga set effort preparations to expel Babur or, at any rate, to confine him to the Punjab. Babur accuses Rana Sanga of breach of agreement. He says that Sanga had invited him to India and promised to join him against Ibrahim Lodi, but made no move while he Babur conquered Delhi and Agra. We do not know what precise promises Sanga had made. He might have hoped for a long drawn out warfare during which his Sangha would have been able to seize the areas he coveted. Or he might have hoped that, like Timur, Babur would withdraw after sacking Delhi and weakening the Lodis. Babur's decision to stay on in India completely changed the situation. Many Afghans, including Muhammad Lodi, a younger brother of Ibrahim Lodi, rallied to Ranasanga in the hope of regaining the throne of Delhi in case Sanga won. Ilasan Khan Mewati, the ruler of Mewat, also cashed in his lot with Sanga. Almost all the Rajput rulers of North sent contingents to serve under Rana Sanga. The reputation of Rana Sanga and his early success against some of the outlying Mughal force as a bayana demoralized Babur's soldiers. To rally them, Babur solemnly declared the war against Sangha to be a jihad. On the eve of the battle, he emptied all the wine jars and broke the wine flasks to demonstrate what a staunch Muslim he was. He also banned the sale and purchase of wine throughout his dominance and abolished customs taxes for Muslims. Having carefully selected a site, Babur entrenched himself at Kanwa, about 40 kilometers from Agra. As at Panipat, he leased together a number of wagons as an outer bastion and dug a trench in front for double protection. Gaps were left in the defences for his musketeers to fire and advance behind wheeled tripods. The Battle of Kanwa 1527 was fiercely contested. According to Babur, Sanga's forces exceeded 2 lakh, including 10,000 Afghan cavalrymen and an equal force fielded by Hasan Khan Mewati. As usual, these figures may be greatly exaggerated, though Babur's forces were undoubtedly inferior in number. Sangha made fierce attacks on Babur's right and almost breached it. However, the Mughal artillery took a heavy toll of life and slowly Sangha's forces were pushed back. At this juncture, Babur ordered his soldiers in the center who had been sheltering behind the tripods to launch an attack. The artillery also advanced behind the chained wagons. As at Panipat, Babur's flanking parties, which attacked from the side and rear, also came into play. Sanga's forces were thus hemmed in and were defeated after a great slaughter. Rana Sanga escaped and wanted to renew the conflict with Babur, but he was poisoned by his own nobles, who considered such a course dangerous and suicidal. Thus died one of the most valiant warriors produced by Rajasthan. With Sanga's death, the dream of a united Rajasthan extending up to Agra received a serious setback. The Battle of Kanwa secured Babur's position in the region. Babur strengthened his position further by conquering the chain of forts Gwalior, Dholpur, etc. east of Agra. He also annexed large parts of Alwar from Hasan Khan Mewati. He then led a campaign against Medini Rai of Chamderi in Malwa. Chandari was captured after the Rajput defenders had died fighting to the last man and their woman performed Johar. Babur had to cut short his plan of further campaigns in the area on hearing of the growing activities of the Afghans in eastern Uttar Pradesh. The Afghans. Although the Afghans had been defeated, they had not been reconciled to Mughal rule. Eastern Uttar Pradesh was still under the domination of the Afghan chiefs who had tendered their allegiances to Babur, but were prepared to throw it off at any time. The Afghan Sardars were backed by Nusrat Shah, the ruler of Bengal, who had married a daughter of Ibrahim Lodi. Earlier, the Afghans had ousted the Mughal officials in eastern Uttar Pradesh and reached up to Kanunj. But their greatest weakness was the lack of a popular leader. After some time, Muhammad Lodi, a brother of Ibrahim Lodi, who had fought against Babur at Kanwa, reached Bihar. The Afghans hailed him as their ruler and mustered strong under him. This was a threat which Babur could not ignore. Hence, at the beginning of 1529, he left Agra for the east. Crossing the Ganga near Benares, he faced the combined forces of the Afghans and Nusrat Shah of Bengal at the crossing of the river Gagra. Although Babur crossed the river and compelled the Bengal and the Afghan armies to retreat, he could not win a decisive victory. Being ill, all anxious about the situations in Central Asia, Babur decided to come to an agreement with the Afghans. He put forward a war claim for sovereignty over Bihar, but left most of it in the hands of the Afghan chiefs. He also patched up a treaty with the Nusrat Shah of Bengal. He then returned to Agra. Shortly afterwards, Babur died near Lahore while on his way to Kabul. Significance of Babur's advent into India. Babur's advent into India was significant from many points of view. For the first time since the downfall of the Kushan Empire, Kabul and Kandahar became integral parts of an empire comprising North India. Since these areas had always acted as staging places for an invention of India. By dominating them, Babur and his successors were able to give to India security from external inventions for almost 200 years. Economically, also, the control of Kabul and Kandahar strengthened India's foreign trade, since these two towns were the starting points for caravans meant for China in the east and the Mediterranean seaports in the west. Thus, India could take a greater share in the great trans-Asian trade. In North India, Babur smashed the power of the Lodis and the Rajput confederacy led by Ranasanga. Thereby, he destroyed the balance of power in the area. This was a long step towards the establishment of an all India empire. However, a number of conditions had still to be fulfilled before this could be achieved. Babur introduced a new mode of warfare in India. Although gunpowder was known in India earlier, Babur showed what a skilled combination of artillery and cavalry could achieve. His victories led to the rapid popularization of gunpowder and artillery in India. Since artillery was expensive, it favored those rulers who had large resources at their command. Hence, the era of small kingdoms came to an end by his new military methods as well as by his personal conduct. Babur re established the prestige of the crown, which had been eroded since the death of Firuz Tughlaq. Although Sikandar Lodi and Ibrahim Lodi had tried to re establish the prestige of the crown, Afghan ideas of tribal independence and equality had resulted only in a partial success. Babur had the prestige of being a descendant of two of the most famous warriors of Asia, Senghis and Timur. None of these nobles could therefore claim a status of equality with him or aspire to his throne. The challenge to his position, if any, could come only from a Timur the prince. Babur endeared himself to be his begs by his personal qualities. He was always prepared to share the hardships with his soldiers. Once at the height of winter, Babur was returning to Kabul The snow was so deep that a horse would into it, and parties of soldiers had to trample the snow so that the horses could pass. Without hesitation, Babar joined in the back-breaking task. Following Babar's example, his Bigs also joined in the task. Babar was fond of wine and good company and was a good and merry companion. At the same time, he was a stern disciplinarian and a hard taskmaster. He took good care of his bugs and was prepared to excuse many of their faults as long as they were not disloyal. He was prepared to adopt the same attitude towards his Afghans and Indian nobles. However, he did have a streak of cruelty, probably inherited from his ancestors, for he made towers of skulls from the heads of his opponents on a number of occasions. These and other instances of personal cruelty have to be seen in the context of the harsh times in which Babur lived. An Orthodox Sunni Babur was not bigoted or led by the religious divines at a time when there was a bitter sectarian feud between the Shias and the Sunnis in Iran and Turan. His court was free from theological and sectarian conflicts. He declared the battle against Sangha a jihad and assumed the title of Ghazi after the victory. But the reasons were clearly political. Though his reign was a period of war, only a few instances can be found of a destruction of temples. There is no evidence that the mosques built at Sambal and Ayodhya by the local governors were built by breaking the Hindu temples there. Perhaps they only repaired existing mosques and put in an inscription in honor of Babur. Babur was deeply learned in Persian and Arabic and is regarded as one of the two most famous writers in the Turkish language, which was his mother tongue. As a prose writer, he had no equal, and his famous memoirs, the Tuzuk-i Baburi, is considered one of the classics of world literature. His other works include a Masnavi and the Turkish translation of a well-known Sufi work. He was in touch with the famous poets and artists of the time and describes their own works in his memoirs. He was a keen naturalist and has described the flora and fauna of India in considerable detail. He laid out a number of formal gardens with running water, thereby establishing a tradition of building gardens. Babur introduced a new concept of state which was to be based on the strength and prestige of the crown. Absence of religious and sectarian bigotry and the careful fostering of cultural and the fine arts, he thus provided a precedent and a direction for his successors. Humayun's conquest of Gujarat and his tussle with Sher Shah. Humayun succeeded Babur in December 1530 at the young age of 23. He had to grapple with a number of problems left behind by Babur. The administration had not yet been consolidated and the finances were precarious. The Afghans had not been subdued and were nursing the hope of expelling the Mughals from India. Finally, there was the Timurid legacy of passioning the empire among all the brothers. Babur had counseled Humayun to deal kindly with his brothers, but had not favored the partitioning of the infant Mughal empire, which would have been disastrous. When Humayun ascended the throne at Agra, the empire included Kabul and Kandahar, while there was loose control over Badakhshan beyond the Hindu Kush mountains. Kabul and Kandahar were under beyond the Hindu Kush mountains. Kabul and Kandahar were under the charge of Humayun's younger brother Kamran. It was only natural that they should remain in his charge. However, Kamran was not satisfied with these poverty stricken areas. He marched on Lahore and Multan and occupied them. Humayun, who was busy elsewhere and did not want to start a civil war, had little option but to agree. Kamran accepted the suzerainty of Humayun and promised to help him whenever necessary. Kamran's action created the apprehension that the other brothers of Humayun might also follow the same path whenever an opportunity arose. However, by formally granting the Punjab and Multan to Kamran, Humayun had the immediate advantage of being free to devote his attention to the eastern parts without having to bother about his western frontier. Apart from this, Humayun had to deal with the rapid growth of power of the Afghans in the east and the growing power and sweep of Bahadur Shah, the ruler of Gujarat. At the outset, Humayun was inclined to consider the Afghan danger the more serious of the two. In 1532, at a place called Dadra, he defeated the Afghan forces which had conquered Bihar and overrun Jaunpur in eastern Uttar Pradesh. After the success, Humayun besieged Chunar. This powerful fort commanded the land and river route between Agra and the east and was known as the gateway to eastern India. It had recently come in the possession of an Afghan Sardar, Sher Khan, who had become the most powerful of the Afghan Sardars. After the siege of Chunar had gone on for 4 months, Sher Khan persuaded Humayun to allow him to retain possession of the fort. In return, he promised to be loyal to the Mughals and sent one of his sons to Humayun as a hostess. Humayun accepted the offer because he was anxious to return to Agra. The rapid rise of the power of Bahadur Shah of Gujarat and his activities in the area bordering Agra had alarmed him. He was not prepared to continue the siege of Chunar under the command of a noble, since that would have meant dividing his forces. Bahadur Shah, who was almost the same age as Humayun, was an able and ambitious ruler. Ascending the throne in 1526, he first overran and conquered Malwa. He then turned to Rajasthan and besieged Chittor. Soon he reduced the Rajput defenders to dire straits. According to some later legends, Rani Karnavati, the widow of Rana Sanga, sent a Raki to Humayun seeking his help, and Humayun gallantly responded. No contemporary writer has mentioned the story, and it may not be true. However, it is a fact that Humayun moved from Agra to Gwalior, and due to fear of Mughal intervention, Bahadur Shah patched up a treaty with the Rana, leaving the fort in his hands after extracting a large indemnity in cash and kind. During the next year and a half, Humayun spent his time building a new city at Delhi, which he named Dinapana. He organized many grand feasts and festivals during the period. Humayun had been blamed for wasting valuable time in these activities, while Sher Khan was steadily augmenting his power in the east. It has also been said that Humayun's inactivity was due to his habit of taking opium. Neither of these charges is fully true. Babar had continued to use opium after he gave up wine. Humayun took opium occasionally in place of or in addition to wine, as did many of his nobles, but neither Babar nor Humayun was an opium addict. The building of Dinpan was meant to impress friends and foes alike. It could also serve as a second capital in case Agra was threatened by Bahadur Shah, who in the meantime had conquered Ajmer and overrun eastern Rajasthan. Bahadur Shah offered a still greater challenge to Humayun. He had made his court the refuge for all those who feared or hated the Mughals. He again invested Chittor and simultaneously supplied arms and men to Tatar Khan, a cousin of Ibrahim Lodi. Tatar Khan was to invade Agra with a force of 40,000, while diversions were to be made in the north and the east. Humayun easily defeated the challenge posed by Tatar Khan. The Afghan forces melted away at the approach of the Mughals, and Tatar Khan was defeated and killed. Determined to end the threat from Bahadur Shah's side once for all, Humayun now invaded Malwa. In the struggle which followed, Humayun showed considerable military skill and remarkable personal valor. Bahadur Shah did not dare face the Mughals. He abandoned Chittor, which he had captured, and fortified himself at a camp at Mansur. But Humayun's cautious tactics forced him to flee to Mandu after spiking his guns but leaving behind all his rich equipages. Humayun was hot on his heels. He invested the fortress of Mandu and captured it without much opposition. Bahadur Shah fled from Mandu to Champaner. A small party scaled the fort of Champaner by a path considered inaccessible. Humayun was the 41st man to scale the walls. Bahadur Shah now fled to Ahmedabad and finally to Kathiawar. Thus, the rich provinces of Malwa and Gujarat, as well as the large treasures hoarded by the Gujarat rulers at Mandu and Champaner, fell into the hands of Humayun. Both Gujarat and Malwa were lost as quickly as they had been gained after the victory. Humayun placed Gujarat under the command of his younger brother Askari and then retired to Mandu, which was centrally located and enjoyed a fine climate. The major problem was the deep attachment of the people to Gujarati rule. Askari was inexperienced and the Mughal nobles were divided. A series of popular uprisings, military actions by Bahadur Shah's nobles, and the rapid revival of Bahadur Shah's power unrevived Askari. He fell back upon Champaner but received no help from the commander of the fort, who doubted his intentions. Hence, Askari decided to return to Agra. This immediately raised the fear that he might try to displace Humayun from Agra or attempt to carve out a separate empire for himself. Deciding to take no chances, Humayun abandoned Malwa and moved after Askari by forced marches. He overtook Askari in Rajasthan. The two brothers were reconciled and returned to Agra. Meanwhile, both Gujarat and Malwa were lost. The Gujarat campaign was not a complete failure. While it did not add to the Mughal territories, it destroyed forever the threat posed to the Mughals by Bahadur Shah. Humayun was now in a position to concentrate all his resources in the struggle against Sher Khan and the Afghans. Soon after, Bahadur Shah, drawn in a scuffle with the Portuguese on board one of their ships. This ended whatever danger remained from the side of Gujarat. Sher Khan. During Humayun's Malwa campaign, February 1535 to February 1537, Sher Khan had further strengthened his position. He had made himself the unquestioned master of Bihar. The Afghans from far and near had rallied round him. Though he continued to profess loyalty to the Mughals, he systematically planned to expel the Mughals from India. He was in close touch with Bahadur Shah, who had helped him with heavy subsidies. These resources enabled him to recruit and maintain a large and efficient army, which included 1,200 elephants. Shortly after Humayun's return to Agra, he had used this army to defeat the Bengal king and compel him to pay an indemnity of 13,000 dinars gold coins. After equipping a new army, Humayun marched against Sher Khan and besieged Chunar towards the end of the year. Humayun felt it would be dangerous to leave such a powerful fort behind, threatening his line of communications. However, the fort was strongly defended by the Afghans despite the best efforts of the master runner Rumi Khan. It took 6 months for Humayun to capture it. Meanwhile, Sher Khan captured by treachery the powerful fort of Rohtas, where he could leave his family in safety. He then invaded Bengal for a second time and captured Gaur, its capital. The Sher Khan completely outmaneuvered Humayun. Humayun should have realized that he was in no position to offer a military challenge to Sher Khan without more careful preparations. However, he was unable to grasp the political and military situations facing him. After his victory over Gaur, Sher Khan made an offer to Humayun he would surrender Bihar and pay an annual tribute of 10 lakhs of dinars if he was allowed to retain Bengal. It is not clear how sincere Sher Khan was in making this offer, but Humayun was not prepared to leave Bengal to Sher Khan. Bengal was the land of gold, rich in manufactures and a center for foreign trade. Moreover, the king of Bengal, who had reached Humayun's camp in a wounded condition, argued that resistance of Sher Khan was still continuing. All these factors led Humayun to reject Sher Khan's offer and decided upon a campaign to Bengal. Soon after, the Bengal king succumbed to his wounds. Humayun had thus to undertake the campaign to Bengal all alone. Humayun's march to Bengal was the prelude to the disaster that overtook his army at Chausa almost a year later. Sher Khan had left Bengal and was in South Bihar. He let Humayun advance it into Bengal without opposition, so that he might disrupt Humayun's communications and bottle him up in Bengal. Arrived at Gaur, Humayun quickly took steps to establish law and order, but this did not solve any of his problem. His situation was made worse by the attempt of his younger brother, Hindal, to assume the crown himself at Agra. Due to this and Sher Khan's activities, Humayun was totally cut off from all news and supplies from Agra. After a stay of 3 to 4 months at Gaur, Humayun started back for Agra, leaving a small garrison behind. Despite rumblings of discontent in the nobility, the rainy season and the constant harrying attacks of the Afghans, Humayun managed to get his army back to Chausa near Buxar without any serious loss. This was a big achievement for which Humayun deserved credit. Meanwhile, Kamran had advanced from Lahore to Agra to quell Hindal's rebellion. Though now disloyal, Kamran made no attempt to send reinforcements to Humayun, which might have swung the military balance in favor of the Mughals. Despite the setbacks, Humayun was still confident of success against Sher Khan. He forgot that he was facing an Afghan army which was very different from what it had been a year before. It had gained battle experience and confidence under the leadership of the most skillful general the Afghans had ever produced. Misled by an offer of peace from Sher Khan, Humayun crossed to the eastern bank of the Karnasa River, giving full scope to the Afghan horsemen encamped there to attack. Humayun showed not only bad political sense but bad generalship as well. He chose his ground badly and allowed himself to be taken unawares. Humayun barely escaped with his life from the battlefield, swimming across the river with the help of a water carrier. Immense booty fell into Sher Khan's hands. About 7,000 Mughal soldiers and many prominent nobles were killed. After the defeat at Chausa, March 1539, only the fullest unity among the Timurid princes and nobles could have saved the Mughals. Kamran had a battle hardened force of 10,000 troops under his command at Agra, but he was not prepared to loan them to Humayun as he had lost confidence in Humayun's generalship. On the other hand, Humayun was not prepared to entrust the command of the armies to Kamran, lest the latter use it to assume power himself. Suspicious between the brothers grew till Kamran decided to return to Lahore with the bulk of his army. The army hastily assembled by Humayun at Agra was no match against Sher Khan. However, the Battle of Kannauj, May 1540, was bitterly contested. Both younger brothers of Humayun, Askari and Hindal, fought valiantly but to no avail. The Battle of Kannauj decided the issue between Sher Khan and the Mughals. Humayun now became a prince without a kingdom. Sindh and its neighboring regions for the next 1.5 years, hatching various schemes to regain his kingdom. But neither the rulers of Sindh nor Maldeo, the powerful ruler of Marwar, was prepared to help him in this enterprise. Worse, his own brothers turned against him and tried to have him killed or imprisoned. Humayun faced all these trials and tribulations with fortitude and courage. It was during this period that Humayun's character showed itself at its best. Ultimately, Humayun took shelter at the court of the Iranian king and with his help recaptured Kandahar and Kabul in 1545. It is clear that the major cause of Humayun's failure against Sher Khan was his inability to understand the nature of the Afghan power due to the existence of large numbers of Afghan tribes scattered over North India. The Afghans could always reunite under a capable leader and pose a challenge. Without winning over the local rulers and Jamindars to their side, the Mughals were bound to remain numerically inferior. In the beginning, Humayun was, an, on the whole, loyally served by his brothers. Real differences among them arose only after Sher Khan's victories. Some historians have unduly exaggerated the early differences of Humayun with his brothers and his alleged faults of character, though not as vigorous as Babur. Humayun showed himself to be a competent general and politician. Till his ill-conceived Bengal campaign in both battles with the Sher Khan, they later showed himself to be a superior general. Humayun's life was a romantic one. He went from riches to rags and again from rags to riches. In 1555, following the breakup of the Sir Empire, he was able to recover Delhi, but he did not live long enough to enjoy the fruits of the victory. He died from far from the first floor of the library building in his fort in Delhi. His favorite wife built a magnificent mausoleum for him near the fort. This building marks a new phase in the style of architecture in North India. Its most remarkable feature being the magnificent dome of marble. Sher Shah and the Sar Empire 1540 to 55. Sher Shah ascended the throne of Delhi at the age of 54 or so. We do not know much about his early life. His original name was Farid and his father was a small jagirdar at Janpur. Farid acquired sound administrative experience by looking after the affairs of his father's Jagir. Following the defeat and death of Ibrahim Lodi and the confusion in Afghan affairs, he emerged as one of the most important Afghan sardars. The title of Sher Khan was given to him by his patron for killing a tiger, Sher, or for services rendered. Soon, Sher Khan emerged as the right hand of the ruler of Bihar and its master in all but name. This was before the death of Babur. The rise of Sher Khan to prominence was thus not a sudden one. As a ruler, Sher Shah ruled the mightiest empire to have come into existence in North India since the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. His empire extended from Bengal to the Indus, excluding Kashmir in the west. He conquered Malwa and almost the entire Rajasthan. Malwa was then in a weak and distracted condition and in no position to offer any resistance. It was during the Malwa campaign that an episode took place which is a bold blot on the memory of Sher Shah. Puranmal, the possessor of the powerful fort of Chanderi, had vacated the fort on a building oath of safe conduct. However, he and his party of thousand Rajputs, along with their families, were treacherously attacked and killed outside the fort. The theologians ruled that no faith need to be kept with the infidel, and the Puran Mal deserved punishment because he had oppressed Muslims and kept Muslim women in his house. The situation in Rajasthan was different. Maldev, the ruler of Marwar, who had ascended the Gaddi in 1532 had rapidly brought the whole of western and northern Rajasthan under his control. He further expanded his territories during Humayun's conflict with Sher Shah. With the help of the Batis of Jaisalmer, he conquered Ajmer. In his career of conquest, he came into conflict with the rulers of the area, including Mewar. His latest act had been the conquest of Bikaner. In the course of the conflict, the Bikaner ruler was killed after a gallant resistance. His sons Kalyan Das and Bhim sought shelter at the court of Sher Shah. Many others, including his relation Biram Deo of Mirta, whom Maldeo had disposed from his holding, also repaired to Sher Shah's court. Maldeo's attempt to create a large centralized state in Rajasthan under his aegis was bound to be regarded as a threat by the ruler of Delhi and Agra. It was believed that Maldeo had an army of 50,000. However, there is no evidence that Maldeo coveted Delhi or Agra. Now, as before, the bone of contention between the two was the domination of the strategically important eastern Rajasthan. The Rajput and Afghan forces clashed at Samil 1544 between Ajmer and Jodhpur. After waiting for about a month, Maldeo, considering its suicidal to attack the strongly fortified Afghan camp in the absence of a strong artillery, wanted to retreat to Jodhpur and Sivana where he could prepare a better defense. Divided counsel with some of the Rajput Sardars considering any retreat to be dishonorable or suspicious zone in Maldeo's mind concerning the loyalty of some of his Sardars as a result of Sher Shah's ruse of dropping some letters addressed to Rajput commandants near Maldeo's camp, resulted in Maldeo withdrawing the bulk of his forces towards Jodhpur. Some Rajput Sardars refused to retreat. With a small force of about 10,000, they vigorously attacked Sher Shah's center and created confusion in his army. Soon, superior members and Afghan gunfire halted the Rajput charge and led to their defeat. The Battle of Samil sealed the fate of Rajasthan. Sher Shah now besieged and conquered Ajmer and Jodhpur, forcing Maldeo to take shelter in the fort of Shivana, where he died soon afterwards. Sher Shah then returned towards Mewan. The Rana was in no position to resist and sent the keys of Chittor to Sher Shah, who set up his outposts up to Mount Abu. Thus, in a brief period of 10 months, Sher Shah overran almost the entire Rajasthan. His last campaign was against Kalinga, a strong fort that was the key to Bundelkhand. During the siege, a gun burst and severely injured Sher Shah. He died 1545 after he heard that the fort has been captured. Sher Shah was succeeded by his second son Islam Shah, who ruled till 1553. Islam Shah was a capable ruler and general, but most of his energies were occupied with the rebellions raised by his brothers and with the tribal feuds among the Afghans. These and the ever present fear of a renewed Mughal invasion prevented Islam Shah from attempting to expand his empire. His death at a young age led to a civil war among his successors. This provided Humayun the opportunity he had been seeking to recover his empire in India. In two hotly contested battles in 1555, he defeated the Afghans and recovered Delhi and Agra. Contribution of Sher Shah. The Sur Empire may be considered in many ways as a continuation and culmination of the Delhi Sultanate, the advent of Babur and Humayun being in the nature of an inter- interregnum. Among the foremost contributions of Sher Shah was his re-establishment of law and order across the length and breadth of his empire. He dealt sternly with robbers and dacoits and with jamindaris who refused to pay land revenue or disobeyed the orders of the government. We are told by Abbas Khan Sarwani, the historian of Sher Shah, that the jamindars were so cowed down that none of them dared to raise the banner of rebellion against him, or to molest the travelers passing through their territories. Sher Shah paid great attention to the fostering of trade and commerce and the improvement of communications in his kingdom. He resorted the old imperial road called the Grand Trunk Road from the river Indus in the west to Sonargaon in Bengal. He also built a road from Agra to Jodhpur and Chittor, evidently linking up with the road to the Gujarat seaports. He built the third road from Lahore to Multan. Multan was at that time the staging point for caravans going to Western Central Asia. For the convenience of travelers, Sher Shah built a sarai at a distance of every two courses, about 8 kilometers, on these roads. The sarai was a fortified lodging or inn where travelers could pass the night and also keep their goods in safety custody. Separate lodgings for Hindus and Muslims were provided in these sarais. Brahmins were appointed for providing bed and food to the Hindu travelers and grain for their horses. Abbas Khan says it was a rule in these sarais that whoever entered them received provision suitable to his rank and food and litter for his cattle. From government, efforts were made to settle villages around the sarais, and land was set apart in these villages for the expenses of the sarais. Every sarai had several watchmen under the control of a shahna, custodian. We are told that Sher Shah built 1700 sarais in all. Some of these are still existing, which shows how strong they are. His roads and sarais have been called the arteries of the empire. They helped in quickening trade and commerce in the country. Many of these sarais developed into market towns, qasbas, to which peasants flocked to sell their produce. Their sarais were also used as stages for the news service or dak chowki. The organization of these dak chowkis has been described in an earlier chapter. By means of these, Sher Khan kept himself informed of the developments in his vast empire. Sher Shah also introduced other reforms to promote the growth of trade and commerce. In his entire empire, custody duty, customs duty for goods were paid only at two places. Goods produced in Bengal and imported from outside paid customs duty at the border of Bengal and Bihar at Sikrigali, and goods coming from West and Central Asia paid customs duty at the Indus. No one was allowed to levy customs at roads, ferries, or towns anywhere else. Duty was paid a second time during the sale of goods. Sher Shah directed his governments and emirs to treat merchants and travelers well in every way and not to harm them at all. If a merchant died, they were not to seize his goods as if they were unowned. Sher Shah enjoined upon them the dictum of Shaikh Nizami. If a merchant should die in your country, it is a perfidy to lay hands on his property. Sher Shah made the local village headmen, mukaddams, and jamindars are responsible for any loss that a merchant suffered on the roads. If the goods were stolen, the mukaddams and the jamindars had to produce them or point out the haunts of the thieves or highway robbers, failing which they had to undergo the punishment meant for thieves and robbers. The same law was applied in cases of murders on the roads. It was a barbarous law to make the innocent responsible for the wicked, but it seems to have been effective in the picturesque language of Abbas Sarwani. A decrepit old woman might place a basket full of gold ornaments on her head and go on a journey. Remember this in picturesque language of Abbas Sarwani. A decrepit old woman might place a basket full of gold ornaments on her head and go on journey, and no thief or robber would come near her for fear of the punishment which Sher Shah inflicted. Great rule, right? The currency reforms of Sher Shah also helped in the growth of commerce and handicrafts. He struck fine coins of gold, silver, and copper of a uniform standard in place of the earlier debased coins of mixed metal. His silver rupee was so well executed that it remained a standard coin for centuries after him. His attempt to fix the standard weights and measures all over the empire was also helpful for trade and commerce. Sher did not make many changes in the administrative divisions prevailing since the Sultanate period. A number of villages comprised a pargana. The pargana was under the charge of the Shikdar, who looked after law and order and general administration. And the Munsif or Amil, who looked after the collection of land revenue. Accounts were maintained both in Persian and the local languages Hindvi. Above the Pargana was the Sheikh or Sarkar under the charge of the Sikdaran or Fauzdar and a Munsif Munsifan. It seems that only the designations of these officers were new, since both Pargana and Sarkar had been units of administration in the earlier period also. A number of Sarkars were sometimes grouped into provinces, but we do not know how many such provinces existed and the pattern of provincial administration. It seems that the provincial governors were all powerful in some areas. In some areas, such as Bengal, real power remained in the hands of tribal chiefs and the governor exercised only a loose control over them. Sher Shah apparently continued the central machinery of administration which had been developed during the Sultanate period. However, we do not have much information on it. Sher Shah did not favor leaving too much authority in the hands of ministers. He worked exceedingly hard, devoting himself to the affairs of state from early morning to late at night. He also toured the country constantly to learn the condition of the people. But no single individual, however hardworking, could look after the affairs of a vast country like India. Sher Shah's excessive centralization of authority in his hands was a source of weakness, and its harmful effects became apparent when a masterful sovereign like him ceased to sit on the throne. Sher Shah paid special attention to the land revenue system, the army, and justice, having administered his father's Jagir for a number of years. And then, as the virtual ruler of Bihar, Sher Shah knew the working of the land revenue system at all levels. With the help of a capable team of administrators, he toned up the entire system. The produce of land was no longer to be based on an approximation or by dividing the crops in the fields or on the threshing floor. Sher Shah insisted on measurement of the sown land. A crop rate called Ray was drawn up, laying down the state's share of the different types of crops. This could then be converted into cash on the basis of the prevailing market rates in different areas. The share of the state was one third of the produce. The lands were divided into good, bad, and middling. Their average produce was computed, and one third of it became the share of the state. The peasants were given the option of paying in cash or kind, though the state preferred cash. The area sown, the type of crops cultivated, and the amount each peasant had to pay was written down on a paper called patta, and each peasant was informed of it. No one was allowed to charge anything extra from the peasants. Even the rates which the members of the measuring party were to get for their work were laid down. In order to guard against famine and other natural calamities, a cess at the rate of 2.5 seers per bigha was also levied. Sher was very solicitous of the welfare of the peasantry. He used to say, "The cultivators are blameless. They submit to those in power, and if I oppress them, they will abandon their villages, and the country will be rent and deserted, and it will be a long time before it again becomes prosperous." Since there was plenty of land available for cultivation in those days, the desertion of villages by the peasants in case of oppression was a real threat and helped in placing a limit on the exploitation of the peasants by the rulers. Sher Shah set up a strong army in order to administer his vast empire. He dispensed with the tribal levies under tribal chiefs and recruited soldiers directly after verifying their character. Every soldier had his descriptive role, chehra, recorded, and his horse branded with the imperial sign so that horses of inferior quality may not be substituted. Sher seems to have borrowed the system known as the dog branding system from the military reform of Alauddin Khalji. The strength of Sher personal army is put at 150,000 cavalry and 25,000 infantry, armed with matlocks or bows, 5,000 elephants, and a park of artillery. He set up cantonments in different parts of the empire, and a strong garrison was posted in each of them. Sher placed considerable emphasis on justice. He used to say justice is the most excellent of religious rights, and it is approved alike by the king of infidels and of the faithful. He did not spare oppressors regardless of whether they were high nobles, men of his own tribe, or near relations. Qadis were appointed at different places for justice, but as before, the village panchayats and zamindars also dealt with civil and criminal cases at the local level. A big step forward in the dispensation of justice was, however, taken by Sher Shah's son and successor, Islam Shah. Islam Shah codified the laws, thus doing away with the necessity of depending on a special set of people who could interpret the Islamic law. Islam Shah also tried to curb the powers and privileges of the nobles and to pay cash salaries to soldiers. But most of the regulations disappeared with his death. There is no doubt that Sher Shah was a remarkable figure. He established a sound system of administration in his brave reign of 5 years. He was also a great builder. The tomb which he built for himself at Sasaram during his lifetime is regarded as one of the masterpieces of architecture. It is considered a culmination of the early style of architecture and a starting point for the new style which developed later. Sher Shah also built a new city on the bank of the Yamuna near Delhi. The only survivor of this is the old fort Puran Qila and the fine mosque within it. Sher Shah also patronized the learned men. Some of the finest works in Hindi, such as the Padmavat of Malik Muhammad Jaisi, were completed during his reign. Sher Shah was not a bigot in the religious field, as is evident from his social and economic policy. Neither Islam Shah nor he depended on the ulama, though they respected them a great deal. Religious slogans were sometimes used to justify political actions. The treacherous murder of Puran Mal and his associates after he had vacated the fort of Raisen in Malwa on the basis of a binding oath is one such example. Sher Shah did not, however, initiate any new liberal policies. Jizya continued to be collected from the Hindus while his nobility was drawn almost exclusively from the Afghans. Thus, the state under the Surs remained an Afghan institution based on race and tribe. A fundamental change came about only with the emergence of Akbar. Thank you.